The council heard that Ukraine was currently enduring some of the worst attacks since the start of the war.
Not a day passes without airstrikes, shattering the lives of yet more families across the country. In Kharkiv, Kherson, Kyiv, Lviv, Mykolaiv, Odessa, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Dnipro, wave after massive wave of attacks continue to kill and injure civilians and cause widespread damage and destruction to critical civilian infrastructure. No region in Ukraine has been spared by this war. Fears ongoing hostilities in frontline and border communities, especially in Donetsk, Kharkiv, Kherson, and Sumy regions, are driving even greater displacement of civilians. Women and children continue to be disproportionately impacted, like many other crises across the world.
A population the size of both the Greater Johannesburg and Cape Town metros that have been displaced by this war, over 6 million now living as refugees. As this conflict, like all wars, takes a severe toll on civilians, including now in the Russian Federation.
Attacks on civilians and on civilian infrastructure are prohibited under international law. They must cease immediately, and we continue to condemn them wherever they occur. Madam President, the intensifying attacks come with a heavy toll on Ukraine's critical civilian infrastructure. Since March, the large-scale coordinated attacks on critical infrastructure destroyed or damaged more than 24 energy facilities throughout the country, including the Dnipro hydroelectric power plant. These attacks have disrupted access to electricity for millions of Ukrainians in large cities and in rural areas. Water supply was also disrupted in some locations. We are concerned about the humanitarian consequences, given reports that the disruptions may last for many months due to the extent of the widespread damage.
While recent attacks on Ukraine's Russian-occupied Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest, and the first time such attacks have taken place since November 2022, continue to pose a serious nuclear threat in the region.
The pattern of civilian harm in this conflict as a whole continues to be of grave concern, and it raises serious doubts about compliance with international humanitarian law. I want to recall that IHL requires parties to take constant care to spare all civilian and civilian objects throughout military operations. This includes protecting humanitarian personnel and assets, as well as infrastructure, essential for civilians' survival. IHL also requires the parties to allow and facilitate rapid and unimpeded passage of humanitarian relief for all civilians in need. Obstructions that leave the civilian population without the essential basic services to survive, these obstructions run contrary to this obligation.
More than 14.6 million people, about 40% of Ukraine's population, require some form of humanitarian assistance. 56% of that number, women and children. The UN Secretariat officials further warned that attacks on the port city of Odessa continue to be of concern due to their impact on global food insecurity. They told the Council that Ukraine's Black Sea ports were an essential component of the global supply chains for grain and other agricultural commodities. And attacks on these ports threaten to undo the progress in stabilizing grain markets and bringing global food prices down. Shervin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.